Thank you, everyone. So start with what is drug development. Yes, so AstraZeneca is a pharmaceutical company, and the main process what we are involved in drug development. It's very expensive and very time-consuming process. It can take 10, 15 years, and it might cost like billions of dollars. To add to this, it consists of several stages, starting from discovery, then preclinical animal studies, then clinical trials in different human populations, and then approval by regulators. And drugs fail at every stage. So we look into applying AI, and we already have a few use cases where generative AI helps us to facilitate accelerating this process, drive innovation, and also automate it. So today I will talk mostly about preclinical and clinical stages, where we have medical doctors, pathologists involved. And I will highlight you a few use cases where we brought value through AI tools to pathologists. So myself, I work quite a lot with pathologists, medical doctors who are important people for clinical and preclinical stages in drug development. And I will talk a bit about AI, how AI empowers pathologists. So as I mentioned, pathologists are important experts at preclinical and clinical drug development stages. And traditionally, these doctors would analyze some tissue under the microscope and then decide whether, like, let's say, there's what stage of cancer is there. So it's more for diagnostic purposes. But in drug development, let's say, use cases, you can think about a pathologist can see if drug works or not, how efficacious is the drug, and also if there are any adverse or toxic events, because we want to develop drugs which are efficacious, they have therapeutic effect, let's say cure cancer or let's say kill tumors, but also they are not toxic, so the patient can tolerate the drug. So how we empower these days, these tissue specimens are digitized, so scanned under high resolution microscope. And then these large images of billions of pixels can be used to develop AI models using computer vision, for example. And there are already different tools developed, and there are like billion-dollar companies built around this business of supporting pathologists with AI tools, where, for example, pathologists are empowered with tools that can predict and segment, outline malignant areas. It can be area of inflammation or tumor, and pathologists can quantify these tumors automatically. Sometimes tumors are tiny, just a few cells. So these tools, AI tools, are very good in finding very tiny, small areas of malignancy and pointing pathologists to these areas and quantifying these areas. Also, as I mentioned, staging severity of the disease, saying if it's stage 1, 2, or so from biopsies. Even provide some survival estimates, which pathologists actually not doing, but there is a lot of research. Can we actually say what would be expected survival of that patient given specific biopsy? Then these AI tools can facilitate suggesting an optimal treatment. And as I mentioned, toxicity and safety of a drug can be predicted from such tools. So what kind of models for pathologists we develop? So these days, I'm sure all of you heard a lot about Gen AI, especially in the context of ChatGPT. It's becomes more and more, let's say, common to hear how these tools facilitate, improvements, productivity in different industries. And if you ask me what is generative AI, I would say generative AI models that mostly built on these three components or three types of, let's say, Gen AI, types. One is think about transformers. So when we talk about ChatGPT is a commercial tool, which is based on GPT, generative pre-trained transformers. So transformers are basic, let's say, units of GPT models or ChatGPT-like models. and these models can work with text, with images, with any kind of data. Then there are variational autoencoders. So think about if you have, like, let's say, pictures of cat, you can encode using variational autoencoder. You can encode these pictures in a tiny representative, let's say, vector, for example, where the model automatically learns, let's say, shape of the head of the cat and eyes. And tail potentially, and then it's this kind of learned representation is kind of very small and allows you to, for example, to use for different. It fully describes the cat. And in terms of, if you think about pathologist and cancer, imagine you have a huge scanned biopsy of billion pixels, then you can use variational autoencoders to encode, let's say, stage of that cancer, number of some inflammatory cells or some cells which are important for pathologists when they make their diagnosis, like plasma cells or different immune cells, erythrocytes, and so on. Also, it can encode cancer-relevant features, which can be used for downstream tasks, for example, to predict, let's say, response to a specific drug, or predict some whether a patient develops some toxicity or adverse events. And then there are generative adversarial networks, GANs. Think about it's two networks. One is generative and one is discriminative. And when you train these models, they train together. So, for example, generative models tries to generate a fake picture of a cat, and then discriminator tries to distinguish fake and real cats. And then at the end of the day, you have two models which are very good. One is in generating fake cats, and the second is very good in discriminating fake and real cats. And then you can use generator, for example, to generate synthetic data and so on. So here's a first use case which I would like to highlight. So as I mentioned, many companies, big pharma and also biotech have developed tools which are already commercial and deployed in hospitals or in research labs. And, for example, one example of such a tool could be you have a biopsy scanned and you want to see if there's cancer or not, and also quantify cancer, where it is, segment out. And usually when you train these algorithms, they work quite well on the data, let's say, from one hospital, from one lab. And then if you try to use that model on image from a different hospital or different scanner, it doesn't work that well. So in this example, you can see we trained like a model on images from one scanner, and then actually tried to predict on a different scanner, and the model didn't work. The prediction was quite poor. So then we decided to use generative adversarial networks to repaint the new images into training, looking like a training data which we train on. And eventually, so you can use these GANs and repaint these images. So it changes the style of your, let's say, test set, and then it looks like more like the data that model was trained on, and then the model works well again. In this particular example, of course it didn't solve the whole generalizability problem, but the performance of the model improved by 16%, which was quite significant boost of the model. So this is just one example of generative adversarial networks where you can, let's say, repaint images from, let's say, different labs to look like your lab, or you also can generate, let's say, some synthetic data and use it for training some downstream models. So it's very powerful approach for domain adaptation. The second example, as I mentioned, transformers are basic units of different generative models. And sometimes, for example, we want to quantify inflammation in biopsies, right? And pathologists then would quantify like how much, let's say, inflammation and where inflammation is. And we had a problem. We had like thousands of biopsies and limited pathology support. And So then we trained a model which had a few parts. First part was a self-supervised learning part based on transformers, where the model managed to learn this latent representation, these features which are representative of the biopsy in terms of inflammation. And then we use these learned features for downstream tasks like predicting whether there is inflammation or not in the whole biopsy. But on top of that, we also managed to produce heat maps that you can see on the right side of the image. These weather-like heat maps actually are strongly correlated with inflammation. So what happened, these heat maps were produced by the model without any annotations, and then they showed this model to pathologists. And pathologists saw a strong correlation between, let's say, the measure of heat, like let's say the more red, the more likely there is inflammation with the actual inflammation in the image. So this is an example of when generative units like transformer can produce very powerful representation that can be then used for different downstream tasks, like predicting whether inflammation or not in the image, but also providing, I would say, region level annotations that can be used to guide pathologists where inflammation is. So very recent generative models which we also been exploring are visual language models. So if you think about large language models, traditionally they are based on text, but visual language models are, let's say, images plus text. And as I mentioned, ChatGPT is LLM, large language model, and you can actually prompt it directly, or what actually you can also do, let's say you can enhance, directly out of the box, sometimes the model wouldn't work to your expectations because potentially it lacked data which some specific knowledge which the model wasn't trained on. But you can enhance LLMs with quite powerful